My name is Sophia. At 31, I work part-time at a neighborhood supermarket. Today is the beginning of November. This time of year, things start to get busy as we head towards the year end. Manager, I'd like to discuss some time off over Christmas. Would that be alright? Well, that's unusual. It's not like you to ask for time off. The truth is, we're thinking of spending Christmas at my husband's parents' house this year. I'm afraid I'll need to take the 24th and 25th off. Oh, that's what it's about. Of course, that's fine. You're always working hard, Sophia. Thank you, that's a great help. Isn't your husband's family based quite far away? And you're from around here, right, Sophia? Yes, I'm from the neighboring town, but my husband is from Boston. Boston, huh? That's quite a distance. Yes, it is. Unfortunately, due to circumstances, we haven't been able to introduce Alexander yet. Oh, that's why. Even more reason for you to head back. Don't worry about the store. Go and visit. Thank you. I appreciate your understanding. Alexander is my son, now 2 years old, and attending a childcare center. When I gave birth 2 years ago, a certain societal issue made it difficult to introduce him, and we haven't found the right time. Recently, things have finally started to calm down, and it seemed like a good time. My husband Lucas is a medical technician at a hospital, and it has been difficult for him to take time off, so we were particularly keen to make it happen this Christmas. Do you think you can get time off for Christmas? I think I'll be okay, Sophia. What about you? Yeah, I got the okay from my manager. Lucas returns home after Alexander is asleep. As we share a late dinner, Lucas asks me the question. Today, we had agreed to discuss whether we could both get time off from work. Oh, by the way, I'll call my dad. He tried to reach me while I was on my way home. Whenever there's news, it's always my dad who calls. My mom is a quiet type. She tends to delegate communication tasks to my dad. That's true, now that you mention it. My father-in-law has a cheerful personality and was quite friendly when we first visited to announce our marriage. He's always laughing and engaging in conversation. On the other hand, mother-in-law, as Lucas puts it, is quiet and speaks sparingly. Honestly, since getting married, we've hardly had the chance to converse, and I was hoping this visit to Lucas's home would help close the distance a bit. Hello? Dad? What's up? Ah, got it. I'll talk to Sophia about it later. Lucas hung up the phone and turned to me. Dad, he's really excited to meet Alexander. Can't stop talking about it. What? He said to let him know if there's anything you want or need. I wonder what's going to happen when we get there. But I'm glad they're excited. My parents also said we should go this year. They said we should introduce Alexander. But you love father-in-law and mother-in-law too, don't you? We're both in the same boat, aren't we? And so, looking forward to our return to Lucas's home, the day finally arrived. Christmas morning. After about a 4-hour drive, we arrived at Lucas's house, just before noon. I knew sister-in-law's family had already arrived because their car was parked there. Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! We called out as we stepped into the entrance. And there, with a beaming smile, was father-in-law. Good job on the drive! Take it easy today! And in father-in-law's arms was Ava, sister-in-law's daughter. Ah! Merry Christmas! Ava, you've grown so much! I'm 6 years old now. Really? You're in elementary school? Yeah. Oh, there's Alexander! Ava stepped down from father-in-law's embrace and gave a bright smile to Alexander, who I was holding. Alexander returned her smile. How cute! Come on in! Come on in! As father-in-law suggested, we entered the house. In the living room were sister-in-laws Isabella and Isabella's husband. Isabella's husband shifted his gaze to us and offered a smile. In contrast, Isabella looked at us with a straight face. Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Isabella's husband greeted us. However, there was no response from Isabella for some reason. I felt a bit awkward, but then Lucas, who came to the living room later, greeted them. Henry, Isabella, Merry Christmas. Oh, we haven't seen each other for a while, have we? How've you been? Isabella, who had been staring at us until a moment ago, now flashed us a smile. Did they just ignore me? But it seemed like neither Isabella's husband nor Lucas noticed. Maybe I'm overthinking this, I thought, and acted like nothing was wrong as I sat down in the living room. Lucas, watch Alexander for a bit. I'm going to help mother-in-law in the kitchen. Huh? I'm good, really. No, it's important to help out when you can. I asked Lucas to keep an eye on Alexander and then headed to the kitchen where mother-in-law was. Throughout all of this, Isabella didn't even look my way, but I chose not to let it bother me. I found mother-in-law in the kitchen and said, "Mother-in-law, Merry Christmas! Let me help you." As soon as I said this, mother-in-law glared at me, bumped my shoulder, and said, "You're in the way." What? Mother-in-law then left for the living room. I could hear her say, "Oh, Lucas, Merry Christmas. Have you been well?" What's going on? First sister-in-law, and now mother-in-law. Did I do something wrong? I couldn't think of anything I might have done. Lucas and I have been married for 4 years, and it's been 2 years since Alexander was born. We haven't really spoken, or even communicated much over the phone during this time. What could it be? I don't understand. Maybe I shouldn't let it bother me. We were planning to head home later that day, so I decided I would discuss it with Lucas when we had the time and stopped worrying about it for the moment. When I returned to the living room and took Alexander from Lucas, father-in-law said, "Here you go, Alexander. Monetary gifts for you." Alexander seemed really happy with the envelope father-in-law handed him. "Ah, Sophia, did you hear that? Alexander just said thank you to me. What a smart kid." Father-in-law looked really happy, but what caught my attention was the sight of mother-in-law and sister-in-law grinning as soon as Alexander received the envelope. It wasn't just a simple grin, it seemed rather sarcastic. I instinctively felt they were up to something, but I reassured myself, nothing like this has ever happened before. It must all be in my head. And so, time passed, and in the evening, we headed home. The next day, we went to my parents' house. Since we see them often, Alexander was all smiles when he saw his grandparents. "Merry Christmas! Your grandpa and grandma have presents for you!" Lucas and I were a bit taken aback by how much my parents spoiled Alexander. Just like the day before, my dad handed Alexander monetary gifts. "Ah! Oh, Sophia, did you hear that? Alexander just said thank you to me." "You're kidding. That's exactly what father-in-law said." Everyone laughed, and as I took the monetary gifts from Alexander, I felt something unusual with my hand. Why does it feel so heavy? I had not sensed anything inside the envelope when I received it from my father-in-law the day before. Yet, I couldn't help but wonder at that moment. He wouldn't have put $100 in here, would he? Is that even okay? I decided to chalk it up to my parents' indulgent love for Alexander. Our home is about a 30-minute drive from where we were, so we ate lunch and then headed back. After giving Alexander a bath and putting him to bed, I decided to check the monetary gifts. Oh, it is indeed $100. Just like last year, huh? I kind of feel guilty. Huh. Well, we'll have to give something back in return, won't we? Just like last year, my parents didn't hold back. Given I'm an only child and Alexander is their first grandchild, I understand their affection. Nevertheless, I was a little flabbergasted. Yet, I also felt grateful, so I jotted down the amount of money received. But my dad seemed quite eager too. Huh. He was totally in sync with my father-in-law. This year will be interesting. Last year, since we couldn't meet, they had sent us a gift card. Yes, and the amount on the card was $100. They were thrilled to have a grandson, weren't they? Remembering my father-in-law holding Alexander and talking happily the day before, I continued the conversation and opened the envelope. That's when the unexpected happened. Wait, what? A leaf? There was a single green leaf inside the envelope. I was at a loss for words. Then, Lucas, startled by my reaction, exclaimed, "What? A leaf? What on earth is this?" Ha! He started to laugh uproariously, but what came to mind at that moment was the behavior of my mother-in-law and Isabella. No way, I thought. Anyway, I'll call them. They'll surely be concerned about this too. Lucas seemed to think it was all a prank, and while laughing, he tried to call my father-in-law, but there was no answer. Oh, they might be in the shower. Let me try calling Mom. Lucas then called his mother. It seemed she answered, and he told her about the leaf. From her surprised reaction, it was clear she was explaining something to Lucas. Oh, so that's what it was. Ha. Alright, I'll let Sophia know. What? You want to talk to Sophia? Me? Hold on a sec. Lucas pulled the phone away from his ear and said, Mom sounds super apologetic. She says she wants to apologize to you, Sophia. Is that okay? Huh? Sure. While his words were surprising, I reluctantly took the phone from Lucas and picked up the call. Hello? And just like that, mother-in-law went completely silent. Then I heard a faint, familiar laugh in the background that sounded like Isabella. Hello, mother-in-law. Like I would ever apologize to the likes of you, you poverty-stricken wife. Excuse me. Your children are as poor as a leaf. Ha! See ya, paper wife. With those unbelievable words thrown at me, she hung up. At that moment, I realized all the events of yesterday were an act of spite. What's wrong, Sophia? You seem off. But how could I ever convince Lucas of what just transpired? First, I needed to find out what mother-in-law told Lucas. Hey, what did mother-in-law say to you? Well, it seems like Dad accidentally gave out the gifts that Ava had prepared. Remember how Isabella and her family came over for Christmas first? Dad had prepared some monetary gifts then. Ava said she wanted to help too. Somehow, in the process, she decided to include a leaf from the garden as a bonus. She might have swapped it with the money. I see. What's up, Sophia? You seem off. I was at a loss for words, being suddenly labeled as a poverty-stricken wife. I've never been through something like this before, and I couldn't find the right words to explain what happened. Actually, But just at that moment, a call came in from father-in-law. Oh, sorry, it's Dad. Maybe he's calling back, Lucas said, putting the phone on the table, switching it to speaker. The phone rustled. Huh? Dad! Did you call by mistake? Huh? Lucas? Oh, it says Lucas! On the phone! Huh? Ava, is that you? Yeah, you got it. It turns out Ava was the one who called back, using father-in-law's phone. You're going to get in trouble with Grandpa, Ava. That's fine. I wanted to talk. Grandpa's in the shower. It's all good. Plus, Grandpa always says we should answer the phone when it rings. So I'm talking for him. While it's nice that Ava is happy to talk on the phone, this isn't the right time. Perhaps sensing my mood, Lucas said, Sorry, Ava, we're in the middle of an important conversation. Oh, really? Well, that's a bummer. Bye, Lucas! And bye, poor auntie! Wait, Ava! Huh? What's up? What did you say at the end? Both Lucas and I didn't miss what Ava had said at the end. It sounded like she said, poor wife. Because Mommy's grandma also calls Auntie poor wife. She just said it earlier, too. Right now, Mom and Grandma are chatting over coffee. Ava, could you explain to Lucas what you mean by earlier? Earlier? When Grandma was on the phone? Yes. So here's the thing. Broke wife once mentioned this to me. It's all about the leaf. Mom used to prepare the leaf with a smile and taught me all about it. She said that for the less fortunate, monetary gifts come down to a single leaf. What? Lucas looked at me with a baffled expression. All I could do was stay silent. That's when my sister-in-law, who had noticed Ava's phone call, shouted, Ava! However, at that same moment, my father-in-law said, We'll talk about it later. Feeling confused about what was happening, I saw the phone being handed over from Ava to my father-in-law. Sorry about that, I was taking a shower. Then, when I got dressed and came out, I found Ava saying something outrageous. So, you heard it too, Dad. I'm sorry, Lucas. Could you hand the phone to Sophia? No worries, Dad. We're on speaker. Sophia's listening too. Alright, Sophia, was what Ava just said true? And those bizarre words were targeted at you, right? Yes, that's right. My father-in-law stammered over his words. Behind him, I could hear my mother-in-law and sister-in-law speaking rapidly and agitatedly, as if trying to make excuses. My father-in-law sighed deeply. I am truly sorry. Please don't blame Ava. She didn't mean any harm. No, it's alright. We don't mind at all. Ava's not at fault here. Thank you. I'll follow up on this matter. Isabella's here too. We'll confirm things with her. With that, he ended the call. Lucas then looked at me, apologizing. I'm really sorry. I have no idea what's going on. He was utterly confused. I told him about all the discomfort I felt during my visits to Lucas's house. We decided to wait for a response from my father-in-law. Surprisingly, we received a reply sooner than we expected. And amazingly, the very next day, Isabella's husband drove father-in-law, mother-in-law, and Isabella to our house. Upon entering, they stood before a sullen mother-in-law and sister-in-law, and father-in-law, along with Isabella's husband, apologizing profusely. We've done something truly disrespectful. We're sorry. We apologize for the outrageous behavior of my wife. The deep apology was appreciated, but the two of them didn't utter a single word. After being married for 4 years, I couldn't fathom the reason behind their animosity, even though we rarely met. May I ask, why did you suddenly act this way towards me? I thought if I understood the reason, I could address it. There might be some misunderstanding, I thought. But there was no response to my question. The two of them were intent on ignoring me. Father-in-law, enraged by their attitude, shouted, "Answer her!" Finally, Isabella grudgingly responded, but her answer was unexpected. Well, Mom was originally against the marriage. Wait, that's it? And why? Why did you let him marry a woman like this? A woman who doesn't even wear a single brand name item, who dresses in mass-produced, cheap clothes. Indeed, I'm not interested in branded items. On the other hand, Isabella is the type who likes branded goods, and my mother-in-law also owns and wears a few brand-named items. Are you saying... Don't tell me that's the only reason you insulted her. Huh? That's all it is. I just don't want her in our family. I wish they would divorce soon and she would just disappear, you know? You! How could you say something so rude? And what about you? Why are you supporting such a woman? You're a top-tier company employee, an elite. You should choose someone suitable for our family, right? Despite Lucas being a well-qualified medical professional, we can't accept such a woman as a family member, can we? Upon hearing Isabella's true feelings, her husband was speechless. However, it would soon be proven by the next words of my mother-in-law that this attitude was inherited from her. Originally, you see, I had found a suitable partner for Lucas. Despite that, he brought home some unknown woman and declared they were getting married. It was a true shock. What? You were doing such a thing without telling us! There are limits to what's acceptable to do to Sophia. It's fine, isn't it? She's just a poor girl, isn't she? Her parents didn't seem very impressive either. Quite impoverished, don't you think? She wasn't wearing a single branded item. In other words, she's from a struggling household that finds it hard to make ends meet, right? What? What are you saying? Besides, to love a child born of such a woman? Impossible. It would taint our precious Ava. We had plans for her to marry a friend's child. Upon hearing his mother's true feelings, Lucas was speechless. I felt the same way, wondering how I could have missed all this. If I consider that my father-in-law called not out of interest but disinterest, everything makes sense as harassment. Well, it's fine if you divorce. Please, do it as soon as possible. Let's go. We don't need to get involved in this farce. Just as my father-in-law was about to say something, I was ready to clear up a misunderstanding, for the sake of my pride. The ones who dramatically opened the living room door were my parents. It's been a while. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, did Sophia call you? Yep, it must be hard to be talked about like that without saying anything, right? When I heard that my father-in-law was coming over, I had contacted my parents. It seems they had heard some of the mother-in-law's terrible comments from outside the door. Their timing was perfect. My parents approached mother-in-law with serious faces. What is it? Then my parents took out business cards from their breast pockets and said, "Here you go." Amazingly, they dropped their business cards at mother-in-law's feet, their attitude seeming to say, "Pick it up." I had to try hard to suppress my laughter. The one who rose to their bait was Isabella, picking up the business card and shouting, "Such arrogance from a poor person! You didn't even wear any branded items today, and your clothes look mass-produced," as soon as she looked at the card. Mom? Startled, mother-in-law also looked at the business card Isabella held. You two are executives of Walla Clo. Yes, my husband and I started out together. He's an executive at the headquarters. I'm the head of planning. Our daughter quit when she got married. You know that, right? Both of my parents are currently working at the headquarters of Walla Clo, a famous low-cost apparel brand. I also, after graduating from college. While I had spoken to my father-in-law and mother-in-law about myself at the time of our marriage, my parents had never explained their situation. So, she could go back to work anytime she wanted, right? What? That's amazing. You work at that famous fashion brand's major corporation. So, what do you mean we're poor? That my grandchild is the grandchild of a poor wife? Because you oppose the marriage, it's okay to harass us? That's not... We're really sorry. But that apology was only because my parents held executive jobs. Needless to say, it was beyond the point of being resolved by just an apology. Henry looked disappointed as he said, "I thought it was a good thing to leave Ava with my parents." "But you..." I stuttered. "I'll drive you home, but after that, we'll live separately." What? What are you talking about? I'm glad I got to see your true face. Let's discuss our divorce when we get home. Henry then left the house. At that moment, my father-in-law also stood up, bowed deeply to my parents, saying, "I'm really sorry for what happened." He then turned to us. "I'm really sorry. I'll be in touch." Looking sternly at my pale-faced mother-in-law, he said, "Be prepared when you get home," before he too exited our house. My mother-in-law and Isabella hurriedly grabbed their belongings and rushed out of our home. I caught my breath at home after my parents kindly offered to pick up Alexander from the childcare center. Later, I received a call from my father-in-law. He told me that my mother-in-law had been forcibly sent back to her parents' house. It's a de facto separation. Apparently, they made this decision because they were unsure what she might do to Alexander. But it's a separation with a premise of divorce, and it seems they are waiting for the right timing. As for Isabella, the divorce was finalized immediately after she returned home. Henry obtained custody of Ava. Isabella, of course, has taken refuge in my mother-in-law's house, but she seems to be getting a good scolding from my mother-in-law's mother, who knows the truth, and is currently on a job hunt. We continue to live our busy daily lives. It feels really good to not only see our child grow up as parents, but also to share this joy with his grandparents. With my beloved husband, we welcomed our adorable child into the world, but my mother-in-law, as I will refer to her, had the nerve to say our child was not cute. Can you imagine saying such a thing about your own grandchild? To make matters worse, she treated me like an unwanted intruder. Well, two can play at that game. This is a tale about a self-centered, horrendous mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law who fights back. My name is Viola. I married my husband Elwood when I was 28. We were blessed with our long-awaited son, Ricky, just a year ago. I went back to work when Ricky was half a year old, placing him in a daycare center while I focused on my job. Some might frown upon that, leaving a baby that young in daycare, but there was a reason behind it. My husband's company wasn't doing so well, and his salary had gradually decreased since we got married. In fact, I'm now earning twice as much as he is. With a newborn child, expenses were only going to increase. With that in mind, I decided to return to work sooner rather than later. I've never disliked my job, so returning wasn't a problem for me. However, there was one person who wasn't pleased with my decision. That person was my husband's mother, my mother-in-law. She had moved in with us 3 months prior. She didn't seem to like me much, not only criticizing my parenting, but also complaining about my day-to-day activities. "How could you leave such a small child in a daycare center? You're unfit to be a mother. It's always been the norm for a woman to stay home and protect the household, hasn't it? Good grief, what century are we in? She kept insisting on this outdated notion. The moment I came home from work with our son Ricky, she'd start, "You're working late again? Don't you feel sorry for Ricky?" I do spend all day with Ricky on my days off. He's settled in the childcare center, so it's okay. But when I tried to argue, she'd furrow her brows angrily. "Well, you're just taking the word of the childcare workers. If you keep this up, the kid won't grow up right." My mother-in-law, for short, who doesn't even take care of Ricky, would boss me around about parenting from her high horse. On top of that, she had no problem attacking my character. "I regret living with a daughter-in-law like you, who only thinks about work. I wonder why my son Elwood married such a woman. I'm going crazy from stress every day." This time, even I had had enough. If it's that bad, should we stop living together? You know why we decided to live together, right? There was a reason mother-in-law started living with us in our house. Originally, she lived in her husband's home. But one day, her husband had a traffic accident and became paralyzed from the waist down. In addition, it was discovered that he had dementia, and mother-in-law could no longer take care of him, so she put him in a care facility. She then insisted that we move in with her, but both my husband and I had work. Considering our commute, it was impossible for us to move from our current house. Then, one day, mother-in-law moved her stuff to our house without warning and just settled in. In the end, this living arrangement wasn't agreed upon. Mother-in-law just moved in on her own. It's what you might call an unwelcome cohabitation. Look, I understand that things are tough for you because of my father-in-law. That's why I agreed to this living arrangement. But remember, we promised not to interfere with each other, right? Huh? Did we? I can't remember something from so long ago. Even when I reminded her of our promise, mother-in-law was riding high, perhaps confident that she wouldn't be kicked out. Her attitude was really getting on my nerves. Enough is enough! I agreed to live with you because we promised not to interfere. This is not what we agreed on. Oh, you're so noisy. Why can't you be cuter, like Cecil? She's such a good, obedient girl. Cecil is my brother-in-law's wife. From my perspective, she's my sister-in-law, and she also has a bad personality. It's better to say that she's cunning, rather than having a bad personality. As soon as she married my brother-in-law, she became a housewife, and was very liked by my mother-in-law. Mother-in-law would invite her to our house without our permission, and they'd talk behind my back. Listen to this, Cecil. Viola is still working, you know. Oh my, really? Ricky is still so small. Can't believe she can do that. Right? Unlike you, who is smart enough to become a full-time housewife after getting married. I don't have to worry about when you have a child. I respect you, mother-in-law, so I'll do my best. Such petty squabbles would go on and on. To my displeasure, they would intentionally converse in loud voices within my earshot. I despised them from the bottom of my heart. Gradually, to curry favor with my mother-in-law, Cecil began to speak ill of me of her own accord. You know, doesn't my brother-in-law make about the same salary as my husband? Yet, you're still working too. Could it be that you're terrible at managing money? Perhaps a few years ago, my husband did earn the same as my brother-in-law, but now his earnings have dipped below that. I hadn't mentioned to them about my husband's company's deteriorating financial situation, partly due to my pride. It's become routine now that whenever Cecil talks trash about me, my mother-in-law joins in, gleefully. Right? It's shocking to think she blames others for her poor financial management and childcare responsibilities. Cecil, you must never become a wife like her, okay? Of course not. I respect you so much, ma'am. Oh, Cecil, you're such a sweetheart! I cringe at their exchange of superficial compliments. I wish they'd take it somewhere else. It's just adding to my stress. I felt the limit of living with my mother-in-law and decided to talk to my husband about it. It's about your mother. She keeps inviting Cecil over every day to belittle me. Huh? Mom does? Since I usually come home earlier than him, my husband had no idea about the harassment. Predictably, he looked puzzled. Yes, she does. She promised not to interfere, but she's been complaining about me continuing to work. Cecil joins in, and they go on and on insulting me. I can't take it anymore. My husband thought for a while, and then said something outrageous. Whoa, but Cecil seems to get along well with Mom, right? Maybe you should try to meet Mom halfway too, Viola. What? Were you even listening to me? She's denying my entire being, you know? How am I supposed to get closer to someone like that? As I pressed him, my husband scratched his head in annoyance. Don't get so worked up. Just try to emulate Cecil for now. I'm sure Mom will warm up to you too. What does that even mean? You want me to flatter her like Cecil does? I've had enough. I was a fool to ask for your help. I felt utterly alone. Frustration welled up in me before the anger did. The snide remarks from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law continued as usual the next day. As I began preparing dinner after coming home, I heard this. Are you planning to make another half-hearted dinner today? I'm tired of your lazy cooking. That's because she insists on working, you know. If it were up to me or my mother-in-law, we would never serve our husbands such low-quality meals, right? For the record, my mother-in-law's cooking is nothing to brag about. It's overly seasoned and not that delicious. As for my sister-in-law, her homemaking skills are quite evident given that she practically lives at our place. While cursing them inwardly, I silently proceeded with my dinner preparations. When my husband came home, both my mother-in-law and Cecil changed their attitudes drastically and stopped picking on me. Because of this, my husband couldn't trust what I said. Just when things were like this, an incident happened. Out of nowhere, I got a call from the childcare center during my work shift. I hurriedly contacted my husband and rushed home. There, my mother-in-law and my teary-eyed son were waiting. What on earth do you think you're doing, mother-in-law? How could you just take Ricky away from the childcare center without my consent? When I shouted in anger, my mother-in-law sighed as if she was tired of it all. She looked at me with condescending eyes. What's all the fuss? I did it for my grandson. Paying for a childcare center is a waste of money. Raising a child is a mother's job, isn't it? But that's just your opinion, right? We have reasons to send Ricky to the childcare center. It's inexcusable for you to just take him without permission. It's no different from kidnapping. Kidnapping? Are you kidding me? Even though he's my grandson? It doesn't matter that he's your grandson. You disregarded the teacher's warnings and just took him. That's kidnapping. No matter how clearly I made my point, she simply shrugged it off. Then she said something unbelievable. What nonsense! To begin with, neither you nor your son are cute. If you have any complaints, just get out! She didn't think my son, her own grandson, was cute? At that moment, a huge red flag went up in my mind. To call her own grandson not cute in front of him? We can't live with this woman any longer. I'll never forgive her for insulting my precious son. I swore to myself to protect him, no matter what. At that moment, my husband arrived home. I immediately broke the news to him. Elwood! It was your mother who took Ricky from the childcare center. I've reached my limit. I can't live with her anymore. Suddenly, my mother-in-law played the victim and started pretending to cry. Listen! Elwood! Can you believe what Viola is saying? She's accusing me of kidnapping. I just want to pick up cute little Ricky. That's all. Isn't it horrible? Just picking him up? I got heated at her words. Stop joking around. You just said that my son is not cute. You told me to get out. This is our house, not yours. Are you just pretending to be a good mother in front of my husband? Elwood, please help me. Viola is always picking on me. Watching my mother-in-law cry out to my husband, I felt as if everything was ridiculous. If my husband were to side with this woman with her poor acting, at that point, I decided it would be just my son and me. We'd forge ahead together. The first to break the silence was my husband. "First, I want to talk with Viola. Mom, please return to your room." My husband, who always sided with his mother, made her eyes widen in surprise with this statement. "What are you saying? There's no need to listen to Viola, right? Can't you see I'm suffering?" "This involves Ricky too. That's why I want to have a proper conversation with Viola, as his parent." My mother-in-law looked unsatisfied the entire time, but probably didn't want to upset my husband, so reluctantly agreed. Afterward, my husband and I spent hours discussing the incident and everything leading up to it, eventually coming to a conclusion. A few days later, we decided to tell her the outline of what we discussed. "Mom, sorry to keep you waiting. We finally come to a decision." My husband spoke to my mother-in-law with a smile. Seeing my expression, mother-in-law must have been convinced that her son was on her side. She started chattering excitedly. "So, you're finally breaking free from Viola, huh?" Without even considering what I had just said, mother-in-law was over the moon. She called my brother-in-law and his wife, and, like always, began bad-mouthing me. "Wow, what a relief! Today, we finally get to say goodbye to Viola. Right, Viola?" To her question, I responded with a smile. "Of course." "Well then, hurry up and leave, and take that not-so-cute kid who looks just like you with you. This house is going to be for me, Elwood, Derek, and Cecil from now on. Bye!" Then my husband, who had been silent up until that point, slowly spoke up. "Let's go, Viola." "Excuse me." "Let's go, Elwood." What? Mother-in-law seemed to be struggling to understand, repeating "what" several times. My husband and I started packing our belongings, preparing to leave with our son. That's when mother-in-law stopped us. "Wait, Elwood! What's going on? We're going to live in this house, together, right?" "What are you talking about?" My husband turned to mother-in-law with a cold stare. "I'm leaving with Viola. I can't put up with your delusions any longer." Mother-in-law trembled, then collapsed. "Why? Why would you side with her?" "I heard everything from the childcare center teacher. How you kidnapped Ricky without permission, how you yelled at the childcare workers, how you slandered Viola at the center. Everything." That's... "I never thought you could sink so low, Mom. Surrounded by people who only listen to you. You really messed up. Enjoy your life." With that, my husband said, "Let's go," and pushed me out of the house. Until the end, mother-in-law called out to him, crying. On the way to our new place, my husband apologized. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize sooner. I hope you can forgive me." "What are you talking about? You taking action now is more than enough." I smiled at my husband. Yes, the fact that he believed me over mother-in-law this time was the most comforting thing. Since then, we've cut off contact with mother-in-law and my brother-in-law's family and regained our peaceful daily life. After we canceled our lease on the house, mother-in-law, with nowhere else to go, apparently moved in with my brother-in-law and his wife. With the addition of mother-in-law and the pressure she put on their living expenses, my brother-in-law's income wasn't enough. As a result, Cecil had to get a job, and now mother-in-law is alone at home. There's no one for her to badmouth or to share in the bad-mouthing. Even with Cecil, who used to be her best buddy, they now argue constantly. "I have to work because of you, mother-in-law. Give me a break." "What? It's my fault? Get out of here, you old hag!" Hearing the real Cecil, her husband seems to have lost his feelings for her. I heard they're in the middle of a divorce. She used to have a lot of free time to act cute in front of my husband, but now that she's working and often irritable, her true colors have shown. No matter how dire their circumstances become, I have no intention of ever interacting with mother-in-law again. From now on, my husband, my son, and I will work together to build a happy home.
You know, I'll be busy taking care of the baby soon. I won't be able to come home for a while, so don't miss me too much, okay? As my husband said this and packed his things, I could only stand there and watch him. He didn't seem to care about how I felt and continued to laugh and hum while asking where our son's baby bottle was. However, the baby he was talking about wasn't our child. He had gotten a younger woman he kept as a mistress pregnant, and the baby was theirs. Yes, this man had abandoned me and our son. My name is Linda, a 42-year-old caregiver. I work part-time, so my income isn't great, but I'm currently studying to become a certified nursing assistant. My family consists of my husband and our son. My husband is 45 years old and works as a manager in a reasonably large company. He has been there for many years. My husband used to be quite the womanizer, and I had been brought to tears many times because of it. I had confronted him several times, asking who was more important to him, me or the other women. Yet I never left him because I loved him. After our son was born, he settled down and focused on his job. Our son, Robert, will turn 18 this month. Time has flown by as I've juggled work, housekeeping, and parenting. Robert had a rebellious phase, but now he's about to graduate from high school. He's working hard to get into his dream college, cramming every day after school. If he gets accepted, he'll move away from home, which is a bit worrisome. As parents, we still want to take care of him, but Robert has grown tall and handsome, just a step away from becoming an adult. I need to find a hobby to help me let go of him. While Robert was studying for his college entrance exams, there were times when my husband would come home late. At first, I thought it was just because of his work, but there was a time when he didn't answer my calls or messages, which made me suspicious. Since then, I've found more than enough evidence to doubt him, such as the smell of perfume on his suits and long hairs in the car that weren't mine. However, I never found the courage to confront him. Then, one day, while we were eating dinner as a family, my husband drank more than usual and said with a flushed face, "Robert has really grown up, hasn't he? I still want to be a kid, though. But you've grown so much taller since middle school, and your face has become more mature, hasn't it?" Robert, seemingly embarrassed to be treated like an adult, scratched his head. My husband, watching him, casually asked, "So you don't need your old man anymore?" "Huh? What are you talking about?" Caught off guard by the sudden change in conversation, I couldn't help but join in. With both Robert and me looking at him suspiciously, my husband downed the rest of his beer and said, "Well, the thing is, my girlfriend is pregnant." The room went dead silent. What did he just say? Girlfriend? Pregnant? Not making any sense. I let out a dry laugh. "I think you've had too much to drink today." "No, this is a true story. I met her a year ago and we've been dating ever since. I was planning to keep it a secret, but it seems like we accidentally made a baby." I stood up quickly and covered Robert's ears. Robert didn't seem to follow, looking at his father with a blank expression. "Robert, go back to your room." "What? This is the last time we'll all be together. I haven't had much time to talk to Robert lately. Let him stay here a little bit longer." "How can you say that? I don't understand how you think it's okay for our son to hear this. And what do you mean by the last time?" In my anger, I raised my voice. I hugged Robert tightly in the spur of the moment. He's already in a sensitive period due to his upcoming exam, so I don't want him to hear this kind of conversation. But my husband didn't care and continued talking. "Well, I'm not coming home for a while because I'll be helping her raise the baby, you know." I felt dizzy at my husband's words. So he had a mistress and made a baby with her, and he's only telling us now when the birth is close? I couldn't understand my husband's behavior, and I felt like I was going to lose it. We had been living together for over 20 years. There were honestly times when I hated him, but I felt reassured when I saw him taking care of Robert as a responsible father. Did he really want to be with his mistress so badly that he would throw away all the trust and years of life that we shared? Well, that's how it is. I'm going to her place this weekend, and I'll start getting ready now. And with that, he started packing his things in a backpack. I stood there feeling as if a hole had been torn in my heart. Hey, do we still have the baby bottles Robert used? In contrast to us, my husband was all smiles. I silently shook my head. There was one thing left, but it wasn't saved for him and his mistress. It was saved for when Robert grew up so my husband and I could look back on our parenting together, praising each other and sharing memories. My husband left the room, muttering that it was a waste, and went to the bedroom to organize his clothes. Did he just abandon us? Robert whispered, tears in his eyes, and I couldn't find the words to deny it. 3 days later, my husband was apparently heading to his mistress's place. When I cried that I had actually once believed in him, he said, "I always wanted a second child, but you were always so busy, right? And while we were doing all that, we got older and older. I knew we couldn't have another one." He laughed loudly, hurting my heart as much as possible. Robert, holding back his tears, glared at his father while rubbing my back. "What's with that look? By the time you come back, I won't be here anymore. Are you okay with that?" "Sure, you're an adult now, right? You've lost your childlike charm and you're not as cute anymore. I heard my girlfriend's baby is a girl, so I might like her even more than you." Robert lunged at his father. He flinched for a moment, but then glared back at Robert. "Ah, she's so young and cute, unlike you guys. I'm really looking forward to our future together. Yeah, I get it now. You're the worst, Dad. At least now both Mom and I can make up our minds. We know what to do." I also speak up, following Robert. "You should know that there will be no home for you to return to anymore." My husband, with an annoyed expression, shakes off Robert's grip and leaves without even saying goodbye. Robert supports me as I feel my strength drain away. We didn't just sit idly by after hearing about my husband's mistress. We had already begun preparing our next moves. About 2 weeks later, my husband called. He laughed, saying that raising their daughter was going smoothly and that she was as adorable as he had hoped. He even sent a photo of the mistress holding the child, which started in me a simmering of rage. However, he had unknowingly provided us with evidence. I saved the photo and began recording the conversation, amazed at how foolish he was. Then, right on cue, my husband's mistress took the phone and began talking. "Are you the wife? I'm sorry I've taken your husband all for myself, but it can't be helped since we have a child together now, right?" LOL. Yes, raising a child can be tough. "I'm so glad you're understanding. When I first heard about you from your husband, I just thought you were a weak person who couldn't do anything but cry. But that's not how you sound at all." So that's what he had been saying about me to his mistress. Half a year ago, such words would have deeply hurt me, but now I felt nothing. The love for my husband had long since disappeared. "You knew my husband was married with a child, and yet you still pursued him, right?" "I didn't know at first. Your husband always took off his wedding ring when we met, so when he finally told me, I was surprised. But my feelings for him didn't change. We'll be together forever." It's a good thing they're both so clueless. This would serve as evidence that the mistress knew my husband was married and still continued their relationship. While her words were infuriating, the payoff would be huge. and it would have been more difficult to take revenge if she seemed genuinely remorseful and troubled by the unplanned child. I told the two of them to do their best and hung up. 2 years have passed since that day. Then I saw that familiar number come up on my phone. I took a deep breath before answering. "Hey, how have you been? I'm coming home now, so make sure the house is clean, okay? Didn't I tell you back then that there's no home for you to return to? What are you trying to prove?" My husband sighed, sounding exasperated. "Sure, I admit I was wrong to leave suddenly, but I can't leave her to raise the child alone, right? You were a mother too, so you should understand." He still doesn't get it. He really hasn't changed at all since that day. Maybe that's a good thing. It makes me feel confident that Robert and I were right to take care of ourselves. I think you misunderstand. There's literally no house for you to return to. I sold it. I could hear my husband gasping. I decided to break down everything that had happened for my clueless husband. That day, 2 years ago, my son and I were struggling to decide how to get him out of our lives forever. In the midst of it all, I realized that there was a risk that he would want to come back and pick up where he left off. There was no way I could continue living with my husband after all he had said. Honestly, even the house we had shared together now felt tainted to me. When I expressed my feelings, Robert calmly asked me a question. "Isn't this house under your mom's name?" "Yes, we renovated and moved into this house that I inherited from my grandfather." "In that case, why don't we sell it?" I was surprised by Robert's bold suggestion, but if I did sell the house, my husband would literally be unable to come back to it. Plus, the money could be used to hire a lawyer and a private investigator for the divorce process. Robert had been saving up for months so we could live without any worries. With that savings and a little more, it would be possible for me to move away with him. I accepted Robert's idea and began making preparations. Robert worked harder than ever in his studies, eventually getting accepted to a college far away, and I obtained certification as a nursing assistant. With this certification, my salary would be higher and I could work anywhere. And so we sold the house. Of course, we had obtained my grandfather's permission. My parents had passed away early and my grandparents had taken on the role of parents. When I explained the situation with my husband to my grandfather, he was furious. My grandparents gave us some of the money they had been saving little by little, telling us to use it to start our new life. When I hesitated, they insisted, saying there was no point in them holding on to the money at their age, and forced me to take an envelope filled with cash. I was moved to tears by my grandparents' kindness. And so we began living in the state where Robert's college was located. Since you never showed any interest in what we were up to while Robert was studying for his exams, you probably have no idea where we're living now. You can't bluff me like that. My husband's voice grew louder, clearly panicked. If you think it's a lie, you're welcome to come see for yourself. We're busy, so we'll hang up now. Hey, wait. At that moment, Robert, who had been quietly observing, took the phone from me. Dad, you said it yourself, right? That we don't need you anymore? And we agree. We don't need a father who abandons us to be with his mistress. With a cold tone, Robert told him this, causing my husband to break down crying. Please, wait. I know I messed up, but don't abandon me. I took the phone back from Robert, ready to deliver the final blow. You might not be willing to agree to a divorce, but we're moving forward with the preparations anyway. Oh, and did you know that the alimony payments for getting your mistress pregnant during our marriage can be almost double the usual amount? Better start preparing for that. Without waiting for my husband's response, I hung up the phone. Calls from my husband came in immediately, but I rejected them. I didn't want any more stress. From now on, my husband would be burdened by the costs of raising a child with his mistress and paying alimony to me. My husband had no real skills to support himself, and I had always cleaned up after him. He would leave dirty dishes untouched and scatter laundry everywhere. He hardly ever helps with housework and only occasionally takes out the trash, acting all proud when he does. I can't imagine him and his young lover lasting very long. Thanks to speaking my mind, it feels like a weight has been lifted off my chest, and I take a deep breath. Robert looks worried about me. I'm fine. I got to say what I needed to, and I feel so much better. Let's go out and eat something you like today. I force a smile at Robert, despite my exhaustion. He still seems worried, but he tries to act cheerful for my sake. I find my smiling son, debating between steak, sushi, or pizza, absolutely adorable. We've been through a lot of hardship, but let's make even more happy memories. It's an unfamiliar place, but Robert and I will be just fine. And I have to work hard to let him become more independent. When I decided to live with him, he said he was happy to still be able to eat my home-cooked meals since he is terrible at cooking. But from now on, when he has friends over or even gets a girlfriend, I'll be in the way. Robert is such a kind child that he'll always be concerned about me, and his girlfriend might eventually get fed up with it. I'll have to teach him how to cook to help him live on his own, so I'll be even busier. My husband is gone, but I don't feel lonely anymore. As I think about our future life together, I laugh, feeling refreshed knowing my husband is completely out of my life. I can now live the rest of my life with a clear conscience.
Why don't you use your family's apartment as collateral? That's probably the only way you're of any use. If you can't do that, maybe we should divorce, huh? Is this man laughing in front of me really my husband? He's planning a hostile takeover of a company and is after my family's assets. And now this? Even as anger blurred my vision, I replied coolly, "Sure, but you might regret it." Regret? I doubt it. My husband continued to mock me. I'm going to show him he's wrong. I clenched my fist. My name is Layla. I'm a 29-year-old housewife. I used to work at Company A, but 2 years ago I married Caden, the son of the company's CEO, and a department head. Although Caden pursued me aggressively, I believe we've had a reasonably happy married life. Caden is kind to me, and our relationship is strong. A major factor in our relationship has been Jackson, my father-in-law and someone I'd consider a benefactor. My mother-in-law passed away, but Jackson, who was also the CEO of Company A, has always been kind-hearted. He treated me well, even when I was just an employee. When Caden and I decided to get married, Jackson was thrilled. Even now, he treats me like his own daughter. I respect and adore Jackson. My family and his get along wonderfully, and I think I'm in a happy environment. Layla, I'm heading out. I'll be late tonight, so no need to prepare dinner. Alright, take care! Lately, Caden has been coming home late, probably because of work. Even when he's at home, he's constantly checking his mobile phone and often travels for business. As his wife, I feel I must support him wholeheartedly. Then one day, Jackson came to our house, looking deeply troubled. "There's something I just found out," he began to tell us. A new venture of the company had failed, resulting in a debt of $3 million. "What are we going to do, Dad?" Caden, clearly distraught, said. "It makes sense. Caden is supposed to take over Jackson's company in the future. A crisis at the company directly affects him. I don't want to burden the employees or you two. I'll approach the bank and our clients to see what can be done," Jackson said, with a concerned look. "Jackson, it's tough, but please take care of yourself." That was all I could muster. For some time after, Jackson made efforts to secure funds. Given the times we're in, no matter how hard one tries, gathering $3 million just wasn't feasible. Jackson came to our house again, looking dejected. "At this rate, Company A is done. I can't face our employees." Caden and I just listened silently. My heart ached. After Jackson left, Caden spoke. "Damn, what a weak old man." I was shocked. I'd never heard Caden speak like that before, and always believed he respected Jackson's decisions. "Caden, what are you saying?" "Layla, sit. I have a proposition." He pointed to the dining table. I took a seat, puzzled by this side of Caden. Caden, what's going on? What proposition? Listen, here's the situation. Caden began, clearly annoyed. Dad's company has a debt of $3 million. He failed to raise the money, so Company A is on the brink of bankruptcy. Right? So, I'll clear the debt, and then, under the guise of making him take responsibility for the debt, I'll take over. I'll become the CEO of Company A. I was stunned by Caden's audacious plan. You want to overthrow Jackson? Become CEO now? What are you talking about, Caden? It's not a bad plan, right? If Dad can't manage it, I will. You'd want to be a CEO's wife, wouldn't you? I can't keep up. And how will you clear the debt? We don't have that kind of money. Your family owns condos and apartments. We'll transfer them to my name and use them as collateral. My heart nearly stopped. Indeed, my family is well off. Just as Caden mentioned, they own condos and apartments. The apartment we live in now, even if it's under Caden's name, originally belonged to my family. It was a wedding gift, and they even provided the funds for it. But once you're married, it's a separate household. I've never asked my parents for money, and I never intended to rely on them. So you want to use my family's assets as collateral to take over the company? What will you do if the company goes under? Do you want to end up on the streets? So you want me to use my family's assets for you to become CEO? It's the best way for the company. Think about it. With that, Caden went to bed. I couldn't sleep at all. I was disturbed by this sudden change in Caden, who had always been so loving and considerate. I stayed awake all night and greeted the morning. Caden had a business trip that day. I couldn't shake off my uneasy feelings after sending him off. What's happening at Company A right now? Why did Caden change so suddenly? I felt compelled to see for myself, so I headed to the company. I used to work there, and as the CEO's daughter-in-law and apartment's head wife, I often visited for company events and brought gifts. No one would suspect my visit. I prepared some snacks and went to Company A after a long time. There, I saw a familiar face. Oh, Layla! It's been a while! It was my former colleague, Monica. Monica and I started at the company at the same time and have always been close. We share a bond so deep that calling her my best friend wouldn't be an exaggeration. Monica! Long time no see! I brought some snacks for everyone. Layla, honestly, maybe you shouldn't. Monica said, looking uncomfortable. Something was going on. I told Monica, I'd like to chat for a bit. Do you have some time? Yes, I've been wanting to talk too. I'm leaving early today. Let's talk. We ended up talking at a nearby cafe. It's been quite a while since we talked like this. Monica seemed distant. I got straight to the point. Monica, can you tell me about the current situation at the company and about Caden's behavior there? I'm really lost. I explained my situation to Monica. After hearing me out, Monica said with a bitter expression, So, the department head, Caden, is doing that to you. I'll tell you everything about the company and him. Please, tell me everything. First, everyone knows the company's in a tough spot, but everyone respects the CEO. We know he's doing his best for us, and we're trying to support him. Jackson has always treated his employees like family. That's why, despite the challenges, Company A's employees stand by him. Yes, he's a wonderful man. But the real problem is your husband, Caden, Monica said, looking resolute. I braced myself for what was coming. What's Caden like at the company? His attitude started changing when rumors about the company's problems began. He went from being a pleasant boss to becoming increasingly abrasive. Now he has a bad reputation. In what way? He's rough with subordinates, excessively harsh, and uses strong language. He even tells other managers things like, "You dare talk to the next CEO like that?" Many at the company are unhappy. I can't believe this. And given he's the presumed next CEO, nobody can challenge him. Honestly, there are people considering leaving if he takes over. I was devastated. Company A had always been a friendly place with a strong sense of community. I knew it because I had worked there. And now Caden was ruining it all. There's more. It's really hard for me to say this, Layla. I urged Monica. At this point, just tell me everything. What I heard next was shocking. A few days passed after that. After Caden returned from his trip, he once again summoned me for a talk. Hey, Layla, are you ready? Ready for what? What? I mentioned it before. The property your family owns. You're serious about this? You really want me to put up my family's assets? How many times do I have to say it? I need it for when I become the CEO. Haha. He laughed arrogantly and continued. So just get your family's apartment as collateral, okay? That's the only useful thing you can do. If you can't, then it's divorce. He then slammed a filled-out divorce application on the table. Looking at him laughing, I wondered, is this really the same kind-hearted man I married? After seeing his plans for the company, his greed for my family's wealth, and now this. With rising anger, I calmly responded. If that's how you feel, be prepared for the consequences. What? I won't regret it. His attitude was still mocking. Think about it. You think you can divorce me? Remember, this house is in my name. I see. I was determined to show him. I clenched my fist. And after Caden fell asleep, I collected the divorce papers from the table, locked myself in a room, and packed. I left the house before he woke up. Days passed and I ignored his calls. 2 weeks later, when I visited our former home, I saw movers taking out our belongings. Watching them, Caden noticed me and grabbed my arm. Hey, Layla, where have you been? You left without a word. Let go of me. What's happening here? Oh, I'm mortgaging this house since you didn't move on the apartment matter. He mortgaged our house? The one my parents helped pay for? Looking at Caden, his eyes were bloodshot, and he had a sinister look. With this, I'll have some funds. It won't be the full $3 million, but with your family's apartment and this, I can cover the company's debts and become the CEO. You'll be the CEO's wife. We might have to live in an old apartment for a while, though. I interrupted him. Interesting, but since I've already submitted the divorce papers, it's no longer my concern. What? Caden was stunned. That day, you said if I didn't put up my family's property, we'd divorce. I took your offer and filed for divorce. Yes, I had filled out my part of the divorce application and submitted it right after our conversation. Caden's face turned beet red. What are you talking about? Without even telling me? How do you expect to survive? You've only ever worked at my company. Caden raged on. Then a calm voice cut through the air. My company? What do you mean by that, Caden? It was Jackson. Dad? Step away from Layla. We have things to discuss. Thus began a three-way conversation between Jackson, Caden, and myself. What's going on? Why is Dad here? Caden exclaimed. It's simple. What the hell are you thinking, Caden? Jackson's voice was stern. I've heard everything from Layla and the employees. Everything? What do you mean? About how you've been trying to take over the company. How you threatened Layla with divorce to leverage her family's assets, and how you've been throwing your weight around at the company, boasting about being the next CEO. I know it all. Caden's eyes widened in shock, and he started to sweat. However, he retorted defiantly. So what? You think you can pay off a $3 million debt, Dad? I can. You should step down from your position and let me handle it. You've already divorced Layla, right? How do you plan to pay off the debt without her help? Well, and you don't have to worry about the debt anymore. It's taken care of. What? Where did you get that kind of money? Yes, Layla, using the properties her parents felt were superfluous, helped me directly by putting them up as collateral. Jackson responded. Just as Jackson said, I chimed in. That's right. I had no intention of handing over my family's assets because you threatened me, Caden. But I was more than happy to help Jackson, who has always been kind to me. Hearing this, Caden nearly exploded. Layla, why would you help Dad and not me, your husband? You're no longer my husband. Sorry your takeover plan didn't work out. How dare you? Caden, enough! Jackson shouted. Caden, in his rage, tried to grab me, but Jackson intervened. Silently, I spread out numerous photos on the table. What's this? Oh. Seeing the pictures, Caden's face, which had been red with anger, turned pale. The photos were evidence of Caden's infidelity. Caden, you've been cheating with a young woman from the company, haven't you? That's why you've been coming home late. It's not what you think, Caden stammered. When I hired a private investigator, there was more than enough evidence. You even brought her along on your business trips, right? You've been dating and even traveling together. It seems like you brought her into our house while I was away too. It's all in the report. That's not true! It's a misunderstanding! Jackson chimed in. Caden, you need to face reality. Your mistress has been bragging about how once the company's debt is paid off by your current wife, she would become the CEO's wife. That's not true. Watching Caden's spirit slowly drain away, I said, You threatened to use my family's assets for your own desires and even cheated on me. There's no way I could continue with someone like that. I'll be seeking damages for your infidelity. Adding to that, Jackson continued, Considering your attitude at the company and the fact that you've been inappropriate with employees, I've decided we can't keep you in the company. You're being terminated. Dad, Layla, this can't be true. Wait! Caden, who had been scheming to take over the company, now faced both termination and divorce. He sat, a mere shell of his former self. Jackson and I silently left the scene. Eventually, Caden was officially terminated. Without his job title and power, his mistress quickly left him. I received desperate messages from him, like, It's a misunderstanding. Please believe me. And, I only love you. But I ignored them all, and we successfully divorced. 3 years later, Caden, now jobless and drained of funds due to a hefty settlement from our divorce, was reportedly living in an old apartment, struggling financially. I had no interest in him anymore. He was a stranger to me. Jackson, on the other hand, successfully turned the company around in those 3 years. He repaid the loan secured against the collateral I provided, and my parents' properties were safely returned. The company is now thriving. As for me, upon Jackson's strong recommendation, I rejoined the company as an employee. Now I'm working positively every day with my dear friend Monica and other friendly colleagues. From time to time, Jackson brings up potential marriage suitors. After my previous marriage experience, I wasn't particularly excited. However, Jackson would often say, I really want you to find happiness, Layla. I hope you start a new chapter in your life. Perhaps he's right. With that mindset, I decided to go on a matchmaking date. Lately, there's been a hint of excitement in my heart.
Welcome back. We're getting a divorce. The divorce papers are inside. I had just returned home, cradling my newborn daughter in my arms. My husband coldly dropped the bombshell and then tried to leave the house as if nothing happened. In my daze, I managed to grasp his arm, desperate for an explanation. What do you mean by divorce? You need to explain properly. I don't understand.
Nothing much. Just that I don't love you anymore.
His words left me with nothing but despair. Was I the only one who was thrilled about the life that was about to begin with the three of us, now that our child was born healthy? And without even glancing at my daughter's face, my husband left with a large suitcase. My name is Mary, and I'm a 35-year-old stay-at-home mom. I'm a bit timid and was drawn to my husband's proactive personality, which is why I started dating him. A year later, I became pregnant and we decided to get married. With the sound of my baby's first cries, "Wah! Wah!" I finally met my little angel, weighing in at a healthy 6.6 pounds. She's a very lively girl. My adorable baby. I sent a photo of our daughter to my husband by email and then called him. But he uttered unbelievable words.
What is this?
Huh?
She's not cute. Actually, she looks like a monkey. LOL.
What are you saying? She's your daughter. After that, I lost all contact with my husband. No matter how many times I called, he wouldn't answer. I was shocked and couldn't understand why he would say such a thing to our child. Looking back, my husband never showed much interest in our unborn baby and always seemed distracted. I had always felt uneasy about his indifference, but I was too busy dealing with severe morning sickness to address his aloof behavior. Throughout my hospital stay after childbirth, my husband never showed up, and my anxiety grew. Once he meets our baby, I'm sure Thomas will change. I kept repeating this phrase to myself like a mantra. But my wish didn't come true. My husband disappeared, leaving me and our newborn daughter behind. What should I do now? I don't have anyone to rely on. I have no parents, and my only relatives are my in-laws. My father-in-law is a quiet man who treats me kindly, but my mother-in-law is tough, and to be honest, I always felt a bit intimidated by her. Mary, how long do you plan to be a stay-at-home mom? Huh? Don't slack off just because you're pregnant. Find a job and work. Don't depend on your husband. But Thomas said he wanted me to take care of the house. I don't want to hear your excuses. From now on, you will have to balance both work and childcare. Got it? We never got along, so I felt that I couldn't rely on my in-laws. I was at a loss in this situation, but I decided to at least put my daughter to bed and open the door to go inside. However, an eerie sight awaited me. What is this? The crib I had prepared for my daughter, all the baby items, and even the furniture had all disappeared. All that was left was my few belongings and the divorce papers left on the floor. I couldn't stand and collapsed on the floor. Then my phone rang. It was my husband. Could it be that he regretted the divorce? Surely he'll reconsider and come back to me. With the sweet hope in my heart, I quickly picked up the phone. Hello? Is that you? Where are you now? Please come back soon.
I forgot to tell you, but I sold the house. You need to be out by tomorrow.
You're joking. What am I supposed to do?
Maybe you should try being homeless.
I was shocked. How much more does my husband want to hurt me? Overwhelmed by my emotions, I sobbed and pleaded with him for an explanation. First you tell me we're getting a divorce, and now you've sold the house? What have I done?
Have you looked at yourself since you got pregnant?
What do you mean?
You looked so pale every day. I thought I was living with a ghost.
He said that with a snort, and then he continued in a cold voice.
I married you because you were a woman who would do anything I said, but now I regret it.
What?
I'm divorcing you because I'm tired of your timid personality.
That's so unfair. You're being too selfish.
There's nothing more to talk about. Get your stuff and get out of the house. Bye.
At that moment, I felt a surge of hatred towards my husband for the first time. But no matter how much I blamed him, our situation wouldn't change. Feeling powerless, I decided to leave the house to buy diapers and formula that had been thrown away. But my daughter, who had been sleeping soundly until a moment ago, suddenly started crying and wouldn't stop no matter how much I tried to soothe her. Perhaps my daughter sensed my frantic feelings. Having been betrayed by my husband and losing our home, yet still having to do something for her sake. As I sat on a park bench nearby, trying to calm my daughter, an unexpected person appeared. You shouldn't take a newborn baby outside. How irresponsible can you be? Act like a mother. Mother-in-law? You really don't understand anything. How do you plan to take responsibility if something happens to this child? It seems my mother-in-law, who knew the date of my discharge, had come to visit our house. However, finding it vacant, she followed the sound of a baby crying and found me. As I was being berated by my mother-in-law, I felt a surge of emotions and began crying uncontrollably. Then, I felt a warm touch on my back. I didn't mean to make you cry, but why are you here? Where's Thomas? Please explain what happened. My mother-in-law was gently patting my back, trying to calm me down. Confused by her kindness, which I had never seen before, I slowly explained what had happened. Thomas did what? Unacceptable. If you don't have a place to stay, come to my house for now. But, no buts, let's go. I'll carry your bags. I was ushered by my mother-in-law and headed to her house. Upon arrival, she uttered words that left me astonished. Let's live together from now on. What? You don't have anywhere else to go, do you? Are you planning on becoming homeless with your baby? At least here you can stay out of the rain and have food to eat. Let's do this. I couldn't hide my confusion. Even though she had been treating me coldly and making sarcastic remarks every chance she got, she was acting like a different person now. Seeing my struggle for words, my mother-in-law gave me a sympathetic smile. I've been cold to you all this time, haven't I? I'm truly sorry. No. I was tough on Thomas, telling him to be more aware of his responsibilities as a father, but now this has happened. I'm filled with regret for not being able to help more. It's not your fault, mother-in-law. Please lift your head. My mother-in-law drooped her shoulders, bowing her head and refusing to raise it. In the midst of this, I decided to ask a question that suddenly came to mind. I always thought you didn't like me. That's why you're cold to me. But is there another reason? It was because seeing you reminded me of my past, and it was unbearable. It was then that I learned a truth I had not known before. The gentle and quiet man who was my father-in-law had been a womanizer in his youth. My husband, who is similar in character to my father-in-law, had also frequently caused trouble due to his relationships with women. And finally, my mother-in-law said, I just wanted you to be a strong, resilient mother. That's why I was harsh. I kept telling you to find a job so that even if you ended up getting a divorce, you wouldn't struggle to make a living. All of her harsh words had a purpose. I was overwhelmed with gratitude, knowing that my mother-in-law was truly a warm-hearted person. But why didn't you divorce my father-in-law, mother-in-law? I don't think I could bear infidelity. I would definitely divorce. That's because I was the one who was supporting our family all along. What do you mean? He used to look down on me, a stay-at-home wife at the time, and changed women as if they were disposable. But I couldn't stand it, so I started to work. Eventually, I started earning more than him. He didn't want to lose the comfortable life we had, so he became submissive to avoid me divorcing him. So the father-in-law I see today is the reformed version after he reflected on his actions. Exactly. I thought that was the best punishment for him rather than just divorcing him. As I continued to have such a conversation with my mother-in-law, I found myself smiling without realizing it. However, my mother-in-law's expression suddenly turned serious. Speaking of Thomas, suddenly wanting to get a divorce, could it be because he's having an affair and wants to be with that person? Did you notice anything unusual about his behavior? Honestly, I have no idea. But I can't just do nothing and let the divorce happen. I took out the divorce papers I had brought from home. Wait, is this? When we saw the papers, my mother-in-law and I exchanged a look, and we decided to make a plan with a certain resolution in mind. The next day, my mother-in-law called Thomas to put the plan into action. I heard you want to divorce Mary.
She already told you, huh?
What are you talking about? I'm absolutely thrilled. It's right to divorce someone like that. You should remarry with a younger and more beautiful woman.
Yeah, you're right. I never want to see her gloomy face again. She might be living under some bridge by now.
What a pathetic man. He seemed to completely believe that my mother-in-law hated me. I felt anger rising within me as I heard him getting overjoyed without knowing I was listening in on the conversation. But hell is waiting for him.
Actually, I have someone I'd like to introduce to you.
Oh? You've already found your next spouse to remarry?
Well, yeah.
Well, that's something to celebrate. I'm going to pull out a celebratory gift for the two of you. I have a term deposit of $10,000 maturing next month. I'll give it all to you as a gift.
Are you serious?
Of course, but in return, I expect a grand celebration and a proper introduction to your partner. Don't rush and register the marriage before that, okay?
I got it. Then I'll bring my partner to my family home in a month. Please take care of the gift money.
My mother-in-law is such a great actress. My husband fell right into our plan, and mother-in-law and I exchanged satisfied smiles. I decided to continue my secret preparations until the day came. A month later, my husband, oblivious to the trap, arrived at our family home in high spirits with a young woman. I opened the front door with as much composure as I could muster and greeted them. Welcome.
Huh? Why are you here?
My husband looked as if he was about to faint from surprise, and the woman looked utterly confused. Then my mother-in-law joined us. Come in, she said with an authoritative tone. Overwhelmed, the two timidly entered the living room.
Mom, what's going on?
Shall we start, Mary? Mother-in-law smirked. I presented them with several photos of them entering a hotel and a report detailing their activities over the past month. I'm suing you for damages. With this much evidence, there's no escaping it. Be ready.
Hold on. How did you gather all this evidence?
Mother-in-law took care of the detective's fees. She said it's best to leave these things to the professionals.
Mom, why would you cooperate with her like this?
Oh, am I wrong? Who would side with a man who abandons his wife and child for another woman and plans to remarry? It's outrageous.
What about the $10,000 gift money?
That was a lie to keep you from filing the marriage registration for a month.
You tricked me.
My husband was visibly upset, and the woman sitting next to him looked like she wasn't expecting this to happen. I thought we had finally managed to punish the two of them, but then my husband said something unbelievable.
We're already divorced. You can't sue for damages by claiming I'm cheating on you now.
Thomas is right. I'm not paying any damages. I was astounded at their words. The statute of limitations for suing for damages is 3 years from the time you find out about the affair. Confidently snorting at their ignorance, I decided to share a certain truth with my husband and the woman. You know, we're still married.
Huh?
I haven't filed the divorce papers you left behind.
Stop messing around. Why haven't you filed them?
I wasn't satisfied with you just declaring a divorce without any explanation. Moreover, did you realize the incredible mess you left behind the day you moved out? Upon hearing this, my husband and the woman, who were both confused, exchanged glances. I presented them with a certain document. This is your marriage registration form, isn't it?
I thought we'd lost it. Why do you have it?
It was overlapped under the divorce papers. You really are careless to leave something like this behind. I laughed. Yes, the document I presented was their completed marriage registration form. The day we found this out, my mother-in-law and I discovered that my husband, Thomas, was planning to marry his mistress. Even though our marriage was still ongoing, we decided not to divorce immediately, but to gather evidence to prove that Thomas was having an affair. I will never forgive you for abandoning our family, and you too, Laura. I'll make sure you pay the alimony. As I declared this, the color quickly drained from Thomas's face. However, for some reason, the woman had a triumphant expression on her face. Well, if you're going to divorce him, that's actually fine with me, she smirked. Huh? Because Thomas is rich, he can afford to pay whatever alimony he needs to, right? Hearing the woman's words, I finally understood the odd feeling I had about my husband. Thomas was by no means a high-income earner, yet when he appeared for the first time in a month, he was dressed in head-to-toe designer brands. I presumed that my husband, Thomas, had been pretending to this woman that he was wealthy. In order to finance his affair, I assumed he sold our furniture, baby items, and even our house. I decided to break the news to this smug woman. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but this man isn't rich at all. What are you talking about? He only makes around $1,500 a month. That's pretty low for his age. I'm his wife. I know what I'm talking about. What? That's not what I heard. Thomas, is what this woman's saying true? Why so silent? You look like you've seen a ghost. Why don't you tell Laura the truth yourself? Unable to utter a word, Thomas just hung his head. The woman, losing her patience, exploded in anger. I call off our engagement. I have no use for a man with no money.
Wait, please, don't abandon me.
I had never seen my husband in such a pitiful state. As soon as the woman announced the cancellation of their engagement, Thomas fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness. I couldn't stand their display, so I interrupted them with the shout, Enough! If you want to fight, do it elsewhere. Get out right now. The two, startled by my sudden outburst, fell silent. Then my mother-in-law, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. Thomas, you're no longer my son.
Mom, what do you mean by that?
I'm disowning you. Take that woman and leave right now. Don't ever show your face again, got it? Frightened by the fierce expressions of me and my mother-in-law, the two were paralyzed. I shoved the pre-prepared written promises at them, making them pledge to pay alimony and, in Thomas's case, child support as well. They left the house as if fleeing. I submitted the divorce papers that very day, putting an end to my married life with Thomas. Afterwards, just as I had expected, my ex-husband broke up with the woman. He had even resorted to borrowing money from loan sharks to pretend to be rich. After collection calls were made to his workplace, he was fired and forced to find day labor jobs to pay the $20,000 alimony and $300 monthly child support. Of course, we also demanded $15,000 from his mistress, who had to resort to working in shady nightclubs to pay it off. As for me, I've managed to build a strong relationship with my mother-in-law, whom I used to be wary of. Having divorced and lost my family, my mother-in-law proposed, "Let's continue living together." I decided to rely on her kindness. I've started working and juggling it with raising my child. I can feel myself changing little by little each day. I think it's because I've become a mother and have someone I need to protect, and because I've been watching my mother-in-law up close. I want to continue living peaceful days with my beloved daughter and the in-laws who I want to cherish for the rest of my life.
The day after my surgery, I woke up to find my husband and my mother-in-law in the room. Sorry, I was on a step ladder at work and I fell off. What are you doing? You're a part-timer, aren't you? Why not leave that to the full-timers? Is this another of your meddling ways? Can you not talk to me like that? I have to stay in the hospital for a while, so sorry for the inconvenience. Oh, speaking of, I just transferred this month's share of expenses to the bank account. I usually contribute to household expenses with my part-time earnings, but now I'm stuck here. I can't even cook, let alone shop. So I figured at least I can give them money. But my mother-in-law turned it down. We don't need your measly earnings. Can you stop making that? I'm doing my part face. Huh? I had no such intention. Intention or not, that's the face you're making. We don't need you. I'm here. Besides, how much can a part-timer really make? It's not a lot, but it's enough to help with groceries. Sure, whatever. My mom-in-law's unyielding attitude started to make me angry. I'm the one hurt, but neither of them has shown any concern. Then my husband, Ash, said something unbelievable. Frankly, you don't need to come back after discharge. You're just a liability. And it's a waste of time and money. Don't expect me to pay your hospital bills. What? He's right. It's your own fault you're injured. We're the ones who will have to shoulder the burden, so you should pay us. Why do the useless ones always cost so much? With that, Ash and my mother-in-law left the room. Both despise any form of expense. So it's no wonder they're angry about me being in the hospital, worrying more about money than about me. I've started to think I shouldn't have married in the first place. A few hours later. Oh, Miss Gwyneth, long time no see. Is that you, Jimmy? What brings you here? I heard you got hurt, so I had to come visit. Just kidding. But I did hear from a former colleague that you're injured, so I took the time to come see you. Wow, you didn't have to. Aren't you busy? True, when I got headhunted a few years back, I was thinking of quitting because I wasn't used to the new environment, but thanks to your advice, I come this far. I will never forget that. Thank you so much. You're making it sound like a big deal. The person who came to visit me is a former colleague from the company I've used to work at named Mr. James. Everyone, myself included, called him Jimmy. After leaving the company, I would occasionally meet up with old colleagues, but Jimmy had been reassigned and stopped coming. Apparently, he was headhunted by another company and resigned. Back when I was still working at the company, he didn't strike me as particularly competent. I guess he found his calling somewhere and turned into a professional. But I didn't expect him to go out of his way to visit me in the hospital. Coming after seeing Ash and mom-in-law, his kindness felt particularly warm. I was still frustrated from what Ash had said to me earlier, so I vented to Jimmy. Really? Your husband sounds quite harsh. This isn't a joke. I'm genuinely frustrated and angry. Well, I don't get it. Where's your husband seeing incompetence? The Miss Granite I know was far from incompetent. She was a talented worker. You were sorely missed when you left the company. Work and marriage are different, you know. Fair point. I've never met your husband. Is he younger than you? Yes, he is. That's why he's so attached to his mother. They're always together, and instead of defending me, he joins Mom in complaining about me. It's so annoying. Thanks though, Jimmy. Talking to you lightened my mood a bit. Once I'm better, let's go out for a meal and invite others too. Absolutely. I'll come by again when I have some time. And with that, Jimmy left the hospital room. He's like a close female friend in some ways. He's the same age as my husband, but he's so much more mature in what he says and does. The difference between them makes me indescribable. Well, I chose Ash, so it's also my fault. Later, I began rehabilitation. During my hospital stay, all I could think about was wanting to go home as soon as possible. But if I go home, Ash and Mom-in-law will be there. I'd rather stay in the hospital. It's far less stressful. 2 weeks later, Ash comes to visit again, bringing mother-in-law with him. What do you want? Didn't you say I shouldn't bother coming home if I'm incompetent? Yet here you are, visiting me again.
Hey, aren't you happy I came to see you?
Frankly, if you're going to complain, you don't have to visit at all.
Oh, easy there. Why are you so mad? I haven't even said anything yet.
See, that's why our child acts distant with you. You always have this cold demeanor. Consider other people's feelings for once. That's why you end up hospitalized.
Here we go again. Whenever Ash is criticized, mother-in-law goes all in with her supported fire. Even though it's a conversation between a husband and wife, things never move forward when she chimes in. That's why I stay quiet when mom-in-law intervenes. Arguing back would only lead to more counter-arguments, and I'd be the one blamed in the end. This time, I was patiently waiting for the storm to pass, but it showed no sign of stopping. Worse still, they started talking about Ash's girlfriend.
My son was thinking of marrying someone else before you, but they broke up over a trivial argument. He would have made amends if he'd apologized, but his pride's so high. He said he'd never apologize because it was her fault.
Look, it really was her fault. I did nothing wrong. Sure, she had a good personality and was attractive. In hindsight, maybe I should have apologized. Then I would be married to someone useless like you.
See, that's what I've been saying from the beginning. Are you sure you want to be with her? I always knew it was a bad idea. This proves I was right.
It's just a fluke. I happened to choose an unsuitable partner this time. I'll be more careful choosing someone with similar sensibilities next time.
The conversation was unbearable. I'm not the patient type to keep quiet forever. Moreover, this guy just mentioned choosing another partner. It seemed like he had thoughts of divorcing me. Well, it'll be a dream come true for me too. Frustrated, I let loose my anger on Ash and mother-in-law. You would have a lot to say, but this is just ridiculous. You mentioned I'm an unsuitable partner, but you're not even good enough to be called that. Initially, I thought you were decent, but it turns out you're just a mama's boy. Plus, mom is so fond of her son. Why don't you two just live together forever? Then no one would end up this unsuitable partner like me. You two seem to get along so well, why not? After saying all this, I felt a mix of regret and relief. What was funny though was the way both of their expressions changed from surprise to tense as I was saying this.
Who do you think you're talking to? Where are your parents? What's with the attitude? For someone so useless, you sure know how to run your mouth.
Mom, there it is. You're quick to call people incompetent, but are you so well-rounded yourself? Must be nice being perfect at your job at home, huh? You're really something. When I sarcastically praised mom-in-law, her face turned even redder.
How dare you act so smug? Who do you think you are?
I'm the patient here.
You little...
Just then, Ash intervened.
Hey, enough is enough. From where I stand, you're way more incompetent than Mom. Mom raised me all by herself while holding down a job. Could you do that?
I wouldn't know. I've never been in that situation. But if I were a parent, I'd teach my kids not to look down on others. It's not cool to call people incompetent, especially someone who's hospitalized.
I see. Well, it's clear. We've never been a good match. Let's divorce. No point in staying together after all this.
Fine by me. You were talking about being cautious with your next partner, right? That implies we're done. I wouldn't want to spend my life with you. Or your mother anyway.
Huh. You do realize you'll be financially unstable if we divorce, right? How are you gonna afford these hospital bills? Let alone your living expenses.
I got injured at work, so I'll get workers' compensation.
And after that, got no plans, huh?
Ash had a point. Even if I plan on finding a job immediately after the divorce, there's no guarantee that I'll find one quickly. Plus, it will take time to see any income. The situation isn't looking good. I need to figure something out before it's too late. I have been vocal until now, but the moment I stopped talking, they took the opportunity to go on the offensive.
So you haven't thought it through? Tough break. But what's said is said. We both want this divorce. If you promise to obey me like a housemaid from now on, I might reconsider. Right, Mom?
Yes, absolutely.
Not happening. Can you please leave? You're polluting the air.
You're a piece of work. Don't say I didn't warn you. You threw away your last chance.
With that, Ash and Mom-in-law left the room, sneering. I have to find a job soon. My current workplace won't cut it. I'll go anywhere that offers full-time employment. Just a few minutes later, Ash returned to the room.
Hey.
What?
No, my boss was around. Just let me hide here until he's out of sight.
Come to think of it, Ash had been complaining about his current boss a lot lately. Apparently, Ash had been enjoying a slack job until this new boss came and shook up the department.
Why is he coming this way? Could he be next door? What?
Just then, there's a knock at the hospital room door. Ash shakes his head at me. I find his discomfort quite amusing. With a cheerful tone, I say, "Come on in." To my surprise, it's Jimmy who walks in.
Miss Granite, I had some free time, so I thought I'd come visit you. Wait, what are you doing here? Oh, Mr. James, good to see you. Huh? Oh, you must be Miss Granite's husband.
Yes, that's him. Did I introduce you to Ash, Jimmy? I think this is your first time meeting.
No, actually, we see each other every day. He's my subordinate right now.
What? Really? It turns out, of all people, Jimmy is Ash's boss. Totally unexpected. Yet, it strikes me as an opportunity for a counterattack. I'm in a really good position right now. Might as well corner Ash gradually. So, Jimmy, how's Ash's performance at work?
Hard to say in front of Miss Granite. He has areas for improvement, but the fact that he's sticking to it is admirable. We had drinks the other day, and he told me he respects me, so my expectations are high.
When I look at Ash, he's staring at the floor, fists clenched. He's probably thinking, "Don't say anything." So I decide to go ahead and speak. You know, my husband mentioned something about his boss. Turns out that was you, Jimmy. But I wonder if I should say this.
Go ahead, no worries. Hey, Gwyneth.
My new boss is so incompetent. He doesn't get me at all, or I'm only drinking with him to gain his favor. I'll bring him down someday. I recorded all our conversations. He won't make a single mistake. And so on. Sorry if I had known it was you, Jimmy. I would have told you so much sooner. Upon hearing this, Jimmy's expression changes, and he shoots Ash a piercing glare.
No, you're wrong, Mr. James. This is all a lie Gwyneth made up.
Jimmy, would you like to hear a recorded conversation I have that says otherwise?
Yes, please. Stop it.
I then play the audio for Jimmy where Ash was complaining non-stop.
Wow, I see. Thank you, Miss Gwyneth. Never thought he'd be saying stuff like this. No need for me to cover for him anymore. What? What are you talking about? You've been swiping office supplies, haven't you? What? Did you know we have surveillance cameras around the office? Maybe you thought no one checks them. There have been complaints about supplies disappearing or running out quickly. When we investigated, we found you were the one taking them. I was planning to question you about it soon, but now I'll just report this to the boss. Wait, what happens to me then? That's for the boss to decide. Don't know if you'll even be able to stay in your current department or the company for that matter. You can't. Oh, by the way, Miss Granite, how about working for a company? We'd be better off with you than him.
Really? Is that okay?
It's fine. We'll likely have an opening soon.
Jimmy turned to face Ash. I'd be delighted to be under Jimmy. I'll make sure not to get too familiar with you.
Don't worry about it.
You scum.
You asked me earlier what I'd do after leaving the hospital. Remember? Now it's my turn to ask. What will you do without a job?
Shut up!
If you listen to me, I might consider letting you and your mother-in-law be my personal servants.
Who would do that?
Oh, I see. Then you and your mother-in-law will be out on the streets.
So, if I become your servant, will you help us?
No way. I don't need a servant like you.
What?
So you have to try your best holding hands with your beloved mom. And so the episode came to a close. Later on, Ash was questioned by the company about the missing supplies and found to be reselling them. He was effectively fired. It was questioned by the police. Now he's being supported by his mother-in-law's pension. Life's being tough. Even putting food on the table is a challenge. As for me, I started working under Jimmy. Although it took a bit to get back into the swing of things, I quickly adapted and became a valuable member of the team. Work is really enjoyable. I guess as long as I have my job, life is good. If I ever consider remarrying, I think I'll consult with someone first.
My name is Rachel, a 30-year-old working for a foreign investment firm. I married my husband Kevin 2 years ago, who works as a civil servant. However, he is not a full-time employee and has to renew his contract every year. At the end of every year, he is apprehensive about whether his contract will be renewed. Kevin's family strongly believes in the superiority of public service. His parents are retired county workers, and his sister currently holds a position in the city office, so you could say they have an unwavering commitment to public service. There is some degree of disdain from them towards me, as I work in a private sector firm. We have been living with Kevin's family since we got married, and they tend to belittle my job every chance they get. Isn't it embarrassing to be working for a foreign company as an American? And it's an investment firm, right? Isn't that just a place obsessed with making money? People who work for private companies are just those who couldn't get a public service job, and those working in foreign companies couldn't even land a job with a domestic company, and they're just there because they have no other choice. It seems my husband, who grew up in this kind of environment, also believes public service to be superior. Even though his job isn't stable and his salary isn't high, he clings to his current unstable job. I once asked Kevin when he was growing anxious around the fiscal year end, wouldn't you feel more secure if you became a full-time employee at a regular company rather than staying as a part-timer at public service? His response was, I'd rather be unemployed than work at a private sector. Kevin has not told his parents that he's a part-timer, and he insisted that I also keep it a secret. Despite having no significant position, he brags about fictitious promotions to preserve his pride. I personally don't think he needs to lie about such things, but it seems like he wants to establish some sort of status so he can be deemed as someone worthy of respect by his parents and younger sister. He never shows me his payslip, but when I see the amount transferred into our account, it's clear that his salary is quite low. Since Kevin has been promoted to section chief, his salary must have increased significantly, right? How much is he earning now? Caught off guard, Kevin blurted out my salary instead. His father was surprised. Is that how much one can earn nowadays? I don't know exactly how much a public section chief earns, but I know that my salary is quite high. As a bond trader, a significant portion of my income is commission-based. Recently, I have been generating consistent profits and earning a considerably higher salary compared to an average employee. Upon hearing the figure my husband stated, his mother commented, It's a different era, so we can't compare directly, but it seems like Kevin is highly valued. She seemed quite proud. Hearing this, Kevin's sister, who works at the city office, chimed in. See, my brother, who is working at the county office, definitely earns more. He might even be at the department head level if it were at a city office. This remark seemed to make Kevin uncomfortable, as he had unintentionally revealed my salary. Realizing his mistake, he quickly changed the topic. Oh, speaking of which, I saw someone from a housing manufacturer around here the other day. Are we planning to remodel this house? Indeed, there was a salesperson from a housing manufacturer company who had visited us recently. To help Kevin divert the conversation, I shifted the topic towards home improvement. If we are considering a renovation, I'd suggest the kitchen. My mother-in-law shouted at me before I could finish speaking. Know your place as a daughter-in-law and don't butt in on family discussions. All you need to do is keep quiet and do as you're told. It seems like my intimidating mother-in-law didn't like anything I did or said. The main reason seemed to be because I wasn't a civil servant. She didn't seem to like the fact that I was receiving all of Kevin's salary and giving him an allowance. Believing Kevin's words that he was earning a lot of money, she had made up her mind that I was the one managing his salary. In reality, Kevin's modest salary mostly went towards his personal spending, while I was shouldering almost all the living expenses. My sister-in-law didn't contribute at all to the living expenses. Why would you take living expenses from us when we're living on pension? Kevin is making so much you don't need it. That's what they said, showing no intention to pay. They don't have to pay rent, and I could manage with my salary alone, but it felt unfair. I wasn't allowed to participate in the discussion about our home renovation this time, so I promptly went to the kitchen to clean up after dinner. Neither my mother-in-law nor my sister-in-law helped with the housework, so I hurried home after work to cook, clean, and do laundry. In this respect, it was helpful to work for a foreign-owned company. As long as you performed well, you didn't have to work overtime, and you could always go home on time. I didn't bring work home either, and it was good that I could clearly separate work from private life. Kevin, on the other hand, brought his work home and worked on his computer even on his days off. I was worried if it was okay for him to bring work data home in this day and age. When I asked him, he said, "I can't help it because I get yelled at if I work overtime, and even more so if I don't finish on time. It's not your concern, so don't butt in." I was the one who got yelled at in return. Kevin had been particularly grumpy lately and would snap at me whenever I tried to talk to him. He even yelled at me when I tried to ask about our housing issue he had been discussing with his in-laws. "Just like Mom said, it's none of your business. You just need to follow what's been decided." I was getting frustrated with Kevin's attitude, who never told me anything, while I was burdened with the living expenses and housework. After a while, a person from the house building company came to the in-laws' house with a computer and discussed the layout and other aspects of the house with everyone except me. When I brought them tea and tried to sneak a peek, "You don't need to look, just go away," they immediately yelled at me. I couldn't tell much from the quick glance I got, but I was surprised to see that it seemed to be a floor plan of a new house and not a renovation plan of my in-laws' home. For some time now, my father-in-law had been saying that their house was getting cramped and he wanted to get it rebuilt, but I didn't think he was serious. It seems that my in-laws, both of whom had quit their jobs as civil servants, received a generous retirement allowance and planned to build and live in a new house with that money. In addition to their retirement allowances, they hadn't used much of their pension since I married into the family, so I thought they had plenty of funds. I tried not to get involved as much as possible. One thing that did bother me, though, was whether Kevin's sister would still be living with us in their new home. She is now 28, and it might be time for her to get married, but I haven't heard any talk about that, so it seems highly likely she will continue living with us even in their new home. It wouldn't be a problem if she helped with the housework, but she tends to dump everything on me, and then complains about it. She's as troublesome as my mother-in-law. I wish she would get married sooner, but recently I overheard my father-in-law discussing the situation with a home builder. "Can we add extra rooms so that when our daughter finds a husband, they can also live here? Ideally, we'd like a house where my wife and I, our son, and our daughter and her future husband can all live together." I was shocked to hear this, especially as it seemed that they were planning to live with my sister-in-law even after her marriage. I can only imagine how big a house for 3 families would be. It probably wouldn't fit on our current property. Considering that they will build the house with my in-laws' retirement fund and my sister-in-law's earnings, I have no right to complain. Still, I can't help but to think how much of a hassle cleaning will be. Then, my husband and his family decided to go and visit the showcase room and construction site while telling me to stay home because it's none of your business. My mother-in-law shouted at me with a nasty grin. Expecting a retort, she looked annoyed when I remained quiet. Construction of the new home proceeded without any information being shared with me, and my in-laws and sister-in-law started preparing to move out. My husband didn't seem to be preparing anything, so I asked, "Don't you need to be getting ready to move out?" "Why would I do it? That's your job." My husband snapped back at me. I was taken aback since he didn't even tell me when and where we were moving. From then on, I started preparing for the move whenever I had time, but I made sure to separate my husband's things from mine. I'd completely lost trust in my husband from this whole new home move-out incident, and I could no longer bear my mother-in-law's terrible attitude. Even when I asked my husband about where we were moving, he just said, "You don't need to know, just be prepared." I gathered from the conversations at mealtimes that the move was approaching, but it was strange that they didn't tell me, the wife, anything. Maybe they didn't tell me because they think of me as a maid. The moving service arrived one day, and that was when I learned that we were moving then. While I hurriedly tidied up the dishes from breakfast, my mother-in-law said, "We're buying new ones so you can leave those. And are you planning to move into our new home with us?" That was the moment I became certain that they hadn't told me about their new home or the moving date because they intended to kick me out. Seeing my husband standing behind my mother-in-law, silently grinning and saying nothing, I wondered if he had the same intentions. Well, I had anticipated something like this, so I had already prepared my things separately. Without a hint of agitation, I looked back at her. "I despise everything about you. From now on, we're going to live as a family without you. Do whatever you want." My mother-in-law, looking quite displeased, shouted at me. Her daughter, my sister-in-law, watched, bored, perhaps expecting me to break down and beg to stay. My mother-in-law was not pleased with my reaction. She spat, You're a parasite, relying on Kevin's paycheck since the day you got married. Get out now. We need Kevin's salary to pay off the mortgage on our new home. Parasites like you are a nuisance." She was visibly angry, her face turning red. I had already planned on leaving, but hearing about my husband's salary being used to repay a loan made me nearly burst out in laughter. My husband seemed shocked, unaware that his salary was going to be used to repay the loan. He stared at his mother, then looked down, unable to tell her the truth. From his reaction, I understood that my in-laws were planning to let Kevin, whom they considered a high earner, take on the mortgage repayments without using their retirement funds. The prospect of how they were going to handle the mortgage repayments became somewhat exciting to me. With a smile, I replied, "Understood. I will divorce Kevin and you can all move to your new place by yourselves." My mother-in-law, not liking my smile, seemed to want to say more, but was led out of the house by my father-in-law and sister-in-law. I told Kevin, who was left behind, "I'll bring the divorce papers, so give me the address of your new place. I have no idea what your magnificent new home looks like, so I would like to see it once." He reluctantly told me the address as I spoke gleefully. With little luggage left, I had a friend help me move out using her car. I made sure to switch and have all the bills go under Kevin's name from mine, utility, and everything. Returning to my parents' house for the time being, I decided to head to the address Kevin had given me to have him sign the divorce papers. Their new house was impressively large, as it was meant for 3 generations to live in, and the grand architecture was quite overwhelming. As soon as my mother-in-law spotted me, she rushed over, yelling, "What are you doing here, you parasitic wife?" Ignoring her outburst, I asked Kevin to sign the divorce papers. Reluctantly, he signed them as his mother continued. "I knew it. A non-civil servant wife is useless. Sign quickly and send her away." I retorted at her, "Such a splendid new house. The payments must be a real burden, right? Can Kevin's salary cover it?" Snidely, I watched as he reddened once again in anger. "I don't want your concern. Take the divorce papers and leave immediately." I wanted to watch my pale-faced ex-husband a bit longer, but with his mother on the verge of exploding, I grabbed the divorce papers and submitted them to the city hall before I started looking for a new home. After all that had happened, I lost any desire to get married again, so I chose a studio apartment to enjoy living alone. There was a nice place near my workplace, so I moved in immediately. Without anyone to push chores on me or anyone bragging about being a civil servant, life was peaceful. Just as I was starting to forget all about my ex-husband, I received a call from an unknown number. "Rachel, can you come back to me? I can't even make the mortgage payments, let alone electricity and water bills. My home phone and cell phone have been disconnected, and I'm calling you from my friend's phone now." This was my ex-husband Kevin speaking tearfully. Rather than relying on me, he should have asked his parents or his sister for help, so I retorted coldly, "Why don't you ask your sister, who works in public service, to help you out? Plus, your parents must have their retirement funds and Social Security, right?" Looking uneasy, Kevin confessed, "Actually, my parents don't have any of their retirement funds left, and my sister doesn't have any extra money because she's also dealing with her own debt." Apparently, Kevin's parents had fallen victim to an investment scam, losing most of their retirement funds. Kevin's sister, thinking she didn't need to contribute to her parents' finances, had been buying excessively using revolving credit, resulting in her acquiring substantial debt. Hearing that I worked in investment, my mother-in-law was openly hostile. Now I wonder if it was because she had been duped by an investment scam. Moreover, perhaps out of pride in their public service job, they tried to maintain their status by purchasing luxury items. Kevin's parents also had debt and were using their Social Security checks to make their payments. I was surprised to learn that Kevin's sister, despite her youth, had been buying branded goods on credit. "Actually, I've been let go. I'm unemployed now." Kevin had been terminated from his job this year because he was caught working from home with the data he had taken from the office. He should have stopped when I warned him about it. It's not surprising given he was taking confidential data out of the office. Anyway, even before Kevin lost his job, his family was struggling financially without my income. Kevin never told his parents that he was a part-timer. His parents also hid the fact that they lost all their retirement funds from getting scammed, and even his younger sister hid the fact that she was in great debt. Everyone in the public service family, full of ego, had a deep secret. They somehow managed when I was around, but after they moved to their new home and I left, their financial struggles became apparent. And as their last resort, Kevin has now reached out to me. Of course, I had no intention of getting back with Kevin, so I flat out refused and hung up. Even after that, he called repeatedly, but eventually stopped after I kept ignoring him. A while later, when I passed by their new house, I saw a "for sale" sign. Talking to a home builder who was there, it turns out that they couldn't pay the mortgage and had to sell it quickly, but they still had debt remaining. Gosh, that family, let me tell you, they boasted about how well off they were, but when they couldn't make their mortgage payments, they quickly sold off their place and even troubled their relative who was their co-signer, said the builder with a sigh. Apparently, when they took out the loan, they had their relatives co-sign, putting the burden on them. The word got around to all the relatives, and with their previous boasts about being public servants, they're now looked down upon. Particularly because the person who co-signed worked in the private sector and ended up bearing the burden. Sitting back at home, I couldn't help but smirk at the thought of how those three, ostracized by their relatives and unable to brag about their public service jobs anymore, might be faring now.